I wanted to just comment a couple of things about tariffs with Trump and a couple of things I think he's missing just really fast too on
Yes,
his
sir.
messaging and something I think the Democrats are missing on their messaging. For Trump, I don't understand. And by the way, Mark, thank you for bringing up Pat Buchanan. You've mentioned him about 3 times in the last month or two. He's always worthy of mention, especially with our current president in mind. Um, I don't understand why Trump didn't carve out exemptions for Greenland and Panama. Again, just for strategic reasons. I think he's missing on that. And I think he's missing on China one thing. If you think of our trade deficit as a function of wage disparity, I don't know why Trump trying to stick it to China, why he doesn't try and sell publicly tariffs on China as a way to increase wages for Chinese workers. And I would think he would explicitly say, talk about how unfair it is that the Chinese make so much less than Americans, and he'll lower tariffs when Chinese people, wage earners, make more money. It would help our trade deficit. It would make us more competitive. It also would stick a needle in the Chinese if he started doing that. And I don't know why he hasn't.
Yeah,
Okay.
interesting. Quite. Yeah. Yeah, another point you want to make?
Last one. And this is
Yeah.
about the Democrats. And it aggravates me about their message. And I'm not, I support tariffs. I'm not a particularly partisan person, but their message, I think they're blowing it with working class people again. Because think of what they've done for the last 90 days. When Trump wanted to keep out illegal aliens, what do they say? We can't have them out. They do jobs Americans won't do. When Trump raises tariffs, Vietnam, China, Ro Khanna saying you can't do that because it's too expensive to hire Americans to make iPhones and other things like that. And it makes me think to myself, what was the point of the last century for the Democratic Party? What's the point of Bernie Sanders saying we need to raise minimum wage to $17 an hour when you are then going to turn around and say we can't have tariffs because Americans make too much money and therefore too expensive to hire to make all these goods?
Yep.
I
Quinn,
think, yeah,
that's great. Quinn, really interesting points. All Sean and then Dan. Thank you for that.
Yeah,
sure.
I think some great points, Quentin. I mean, there's this dichotomy. We need to raise wages, but we lose out to all these other countries because of I mean, it all doesn't flow together. And I think there's a couple different things. One of the false arguments that I think we get brought into is, and I've said this before, manufacturing necessarily all mean people making things. There's a lot of automation now that happens. In a lot of factories. And I just think we need that. Where we're missing the boat is we're having an argument that says we have to bring everything back and have Americans make it. I do think that we're lacking a manufacturing base, an industrial manufacturing base that's critical to our defense industrial base. But that doesn't mean it all has to be human made. I do think there's a human element to a lot of it, but we're combining a lot of arguments that don't all go together. And I think you pointed them out well, Quentin.
Dan.
I mean, I'll say two things. I think one, I've said now for the last week and a half that if you were going to do a tariff battle with China, you would go try to make friends with Vietnam, Singapore, Malaysia. Where's President Xi going this week? Vietnam, Singapore, Malaysia, trying to bring them into his sphere. So you're right. Like Greenland, Panama, anyone we want in our corner. Why, try to do this? The second thing is, I think, with all due respect, Quentin, you're cherry picking from two sides of the party. There's the free trade wing, the Bill Clinton wing, which Ro Khanna is kind of speaking about, which is tariffs are not good, right? And the arguments that they make. But that is not the crowd that turns around and says raise the minimum wage necessarily to $17. Then there is the Bernie Sanders wing and the Elizabeth Warren wing, and they are very careful on tariffs. In fact, they're getting attacked for saying some of these tariffs are good. Tariffs are a good tool in the tool belt. So the party isn't on the same page, just as the Republican Party has the old Reagan wing that, in the Wall Street Journal editorial board and other things railing against these tariffs. And then you've got the MAGA wing that thinks these things are great. So this issue splits the Democrats just like it splits Republicans.
Can I make one more point, Quentin? Because we've all used the thing, and I can say this as the former assistant U.S. trade rep that sold a bunch of deals. We were bought into this idea of free trade, and I believe in free trade. But I think that the what we were sold is a concept that like we give you access to our market, average tariff rate is somewhere around 1.5. We're facing massive tariffs, but we used it for soft power. We described this in the past. I mean, Dan kind of is tangentially referencing that. Part of the reason that we did it was a cudgel to the Soviet Union to say, come do business with us. We'll put it up against them. That's not, I mean, that's not actual free trade though. Free trade is I trade with you, you trade with me. We get a deal. When it's you pay less, we pay more, you pay less. That's not really fair or free. That President Trump is trying to correct. That we've used it more as a diplomatic tool in the past, not as a business tool and a national security tool, which is where I think we are now. And that's something that I think is missing from the current dialogue. When you realize how much more, we pay, and I have a whole list of clips that I'll play tonight on my show where whether it's farmers or manufacturing, we get screwed. And at some point, you have to say to yourself, is that fair for the U.S. or not? And with respect to some of the deals you mentioned, and I know some of the people in the media who've never dealt with trade issues before have made fun of like there's the McDonald's Island off the coast of whatever. There's a harmonized what they call the harmonized schedule of trade that they followed, which talks about stuff, and you just go down the schedule, which is where all the so it's not so much you go through each country and cherry pick. They literally went down the schedule of trading partners and determine that rate based on a formula that they came up with. So you don't go, we don't like you or we like you more, so we're going to trade it. That was how they sort of developed this idea of what they were going to come up with as a formula to have the rate on the reciprocal side look like.
Quentin,
the only thing is, I keep saying this. If you're in an IP intensive industry or services, you have not been screwed by free trade. Manufacturing has been harmed in some sectors, but I want to keep making this point because I also worked on free trade for years. Certain sectors have benefited huge in this country, huge.